So hello, everybody, by the way. It's good to see you all. I am happy to introduce Jim Christensen. He is a photographer, teacher, and speaker from the New York City area, president of the Croton Council on Arts, founder of the Photographers of Northern Westchester, and was the artist in residence at Acadia National Park in the spring of 2015. He's spoken and run workshops at many of the photo clubs in the Northeast and has a deep technical background in digital imaging theory and software as a result of his career as a research scientist at IBM. You can see some of his work on Facebook, where he is the Jim Christensen in the Westchester, New York, and on his website, jimchristensenphotography.com. And Linda, I know you're muted, but Jim thinks that you're the one that gave me his name.
Yep, absolutely. I know Jim from my old Westchester days.
Okay, well, so Linda is the reason we have Jim. So if you guys would say hi to Jim.
That puts the pressure on Linda.
And by the way, thank you again for judging for us. And he is a repeat, so it's not on Linda. He got invited back because we love him, so.
Okay, on with the show. Everybody is muted. All right, I share my screen. Hold on a second. Come on. Or is this?
So while Sean is, oh, there it goes.
Okay. I got to adjust it here a little bit. There we go. Everybody see that? Give me a thumbs up. All right. All right. Welcome to our first competition of the new year. Our assigned topics. Two topics. First topic is round things. I believe, yeah, it's round things. And the second topic is perspective. We have, well, it looks like 30 entries for assigned one and 25 entries for assigned two. So we're going to start with the first one. We have 5 places and 5 honorable mentions in each topic. First up, Chevy 57 Chevy, Thomas Whitmore.
Oh, let me just say a few things before I start. One is, just to put my remarks in context. So when Jenna first circulated the list of competition themes, I looked over the themes and circles jumped right out at me is the one that I would most like to judge. But I had to juggle my calendar to free up this date to do it. So I had high expectations going into this, but you did not disappoint me. This is a very strong collection of images. So, if your image did not place, don't feel bad because it's a really strong collection. Now, I didn't have as high expectations going into the second one, which was perspectives. But once again, you didn't disappoint me. It's a great set of images and I enjoyed going through them. So I think we're going to have fun tonight talking about them. The only thing that I really don't like about this format is we don't get to have a dialogue. I much prefer an interactive session. So if you do have questions and there's time, after we go through them, feel free to ask. And if that's not appropriate for your club, please send me your questions through email. My email is mrjimchristensen@gmail.com, and either Sean or Jenna could make that available to you. Now, I also want to tell you that, Sean was nice enough to get me these images on Monday. So I've had a couple of days to live with them. Right, I've been through them multiple times. Some of them I've even taken into Photoshop to see if some suggestions that I thought might improve the image actually would. So I'm pretty familiar with all these images, but I suspect you're not. I think in many of these, you'll probably be seeing the images for the first time. So when the image comes up, I'll give you a little time to digest it, and it'll also let me read the remarks that I've noted down about the image. Now, I've got one surprise here, though, because when I've made my notes, I did it with image number, and I was assuming the images were going to come up in the same order, like numbers 1, 2, 3, that I've noted down on my notepad, and this one isn't. So, Sean, is there any way we can have them come up in the same order that the preview link that you sent me had, or is that just not possible?
It's not possible without a lot of work.
Okay, so second best would be, can you tell me which number this was in the set that you sent me?
I can probably do that. Hold on one second.
That'd be terrific, because otherwise it's going to be a struggle for me to find.
Where is it? All right.
Okay, this was image number 29. I just found it in my notes and recognized the comment. Would it be possible to use the same link that you sent me to go through them now?
No, because these are set up to be in the order for judging, where the final images are at the end.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, yeah, I can.
Well, I guess I could try to bring up another browser and pull up that link myself.
Right.
And
this will be image 29.
Yep. No, I found that in my remarks, but rather than go through this every time, if there was a quick way to recover those numbers, that would really help me.
I think in the future, we've ran into this before, I may end up putting the number up here in the title somewhere.
That'd be super.
that way, you can check them out. That's actually a good idea. I'll take that for next time.
Okay, so I'm
always working to improve.
I'm going to pull up that link, put it on another screen. Now I've got to get back to look at the Zoom screen. There it is. Okay. Okay, and as we said, this is on the second page. Oh, the last one, number 29. Okay. So I think you've absorbed this one, so I'm going to start. Okay. By the title, I can tell this is a 57 Chevy, and that was truly a great car, right? I didn't have one, but I had a friend who did. And I don't remember this detail on that car. Somehow this looks like the designers designed a torpedo on the front of this car, and how fitting, that they put that on a bumper. So thank you for sharing that. I like the reflected headlight in the chrome on the top of the torpedo there. It kind of reinforces the theme of circular things. But on the artistic dimension, I'm finding this image a little confusing. There's a lot vying here for my attention, right? I want to focus on that torpedo, but there's a lot going on here. The reflections of the parking lot in the chrome, the dark spots at the top left and bottom right are both pulling my eye. So, I think you picked a really good feature, but somehow I would like you to try and make that feature more of the focal point of the image. And by focal point, I don't mean where the camera's focused. I mean where the viewer's eye focuses when they look at this picture. I know it's really hard to photograph shiny things, so it's a challenge. But anyway, that's my recommendation for this one. All right, let's go to the next.
Next up is image number 5. Image 5. Headlamps, 1947 Jaguar MK4 Coupe.
Well done. Well done. So here's another one of a classic car, and a feature on that car. And I just love the color of the big light here, right? It's just that beautiful amber color and those spokes coming out from the middle. It's really classy. Well, of course, you know, it's a Jaguar, so why wouldn't it be, right? That said, right, artistically, again, I have kind of a challenge here because that strip on the right side is somehow discordant with this lovely curve and circles on the left. And artistically, those things are kind of working against each other. I suspect that thing on the right is part of the radiator for the car. And how do you photograph the fender without the radiator? I don't know. Right? I don't do car photography, but you know, my art side is telling me if I were just, you know, sort of painting this from a blank canvas, I'd include just like the curved parts, but not the square and colorful line and that sort of thing. So here again, you know, I'm kind of throwing out a challenge to you as car photographers. You know, find some way to make your dominant feature more prominent, the more eye-catching part of the image, and to not compete with some other ancillary part of the image. Okay.
Next image is number 26, I believe. Yep, 26.
26. All righty.
Parasol, Sean Sullivan.
Parasol. Oops. I don't know if it's proper to say the name, but okay, Sean. So this is your picture, Sean?
Yes.
Okay. So, wow, you really found a colorful scene, right? It's just bursting with color. It's got this huge circle that's very prominent. That's clearly the focal point of the image. But once again, my same reaction is coming through here. There's so much vying for my attention here that my eye is kind of darting around the frame, right? At first it goes to that umbrella, but then it goes up to the stuff right above it in the background, the colorful woman on the left, that red parasol. So, you know, there's a lot vying for my attention here. Now, you know, for all three of these images, I've suggested trying to find some way to steer the viewer's eye. And you know, probably the best way to do that is when you capture it. But if you can't do it during capture, right, there are some ways to do it in post. And by post, I mean, you know, whatever you do to render that digital negative as a final competition image. And the techniques that I've learned for how I can steer my viewer's eye are to use brightness, saturation, and sharpness to help focus the viewer on what I want them to see, and then de-emphasize those characteristics in things that I don't. So for example here, had you darkened, desaturated, blurred out everything but that blue umbrella, it would have helped my eye just kind of stay locked onto that and not, you know, kind of search around for what you want me to look at in this picture. Okay, so just some thoughts there, but you did find a really colorful circle here. It's a good one. All right, next image.
Next image is number 7.
Number 7.
Rock Harbor Sunset, Janice Pritchett.
Rock Harbor Sunset. Wow. So a few of the images in this group, I really pondered, and this was one of them. I used to spend my summers up in Maine, didn't this year because of COVID, but this is such an evocative sunset, right? And how many amazing sunsets have we seen, right? Thousands, probably tens of thousands. And this isn't one of those sky on fire sunsets, but it's truly beautiful, right? You've done just an amazing job here in capturing the sunset and composing it. The reason I didn't score this one higher was because of the application to the theme, right? It's true the sun is kind of round, but that's not kind of the major message I get from this image, which is just the beauty of the sunset and the swirled mixture here of the reeds in the water and the reflections of the cloud in the water. So, you know, my hat's off to the sunset. I love those light streaks coming out from the sun. I just wish it would have been in a landscape competition or a sunset competition. All right, next image.
Next image is number 4.
Number 4.
Merry and Bright, Elena Kesey.
Number 4. So these are like maybe the most wonderful berries that I've ever seen. I have no idea what they are, but they look like giant lollipops to me, right? So, great find here. Now, artistically, I have a few suggestions on how this one might, be improved a little bit, in the sense that when I look at this, my eye is kind of competing right now between those bright green leaves and these wonderful colored berries. Best of all would be just don't have the leaves, right? Now, if this isn't your plant, you may not want to cut those leaves off, right? Botanical gardens frown on that. So, what I would do is I would just go into Photoshop and get rid of the leaves, right? The one in the back is easy. The one in the front's a little harder, but not impossible, right? So that would be my top suggestion on how to make it a more compelling piece of art. The other thing that I would try, and I actually did try on this one, was to make that stem a little more of an exaggerated diagonal, because those diagonal lines add power and help us draw our eye into the image. And I tried all different ways of flipping this and changing it, and I really like the orientation here, but I think I might exaggerate the diagonal a little bit. Okay, so love the image, and those are my suggestions on how to improve it artistically. Next image.
Next image is number 20.
20. You're doing a great job with the numbers, Sean. Thank you so much.
Going to the circus, Paul O'Keefe.
Oh, okay. So whoever shot this did a magnificent job in rendering this image, right? When I look at this, I could imagine that this is a sketch, right? The Ferris wheel is just like laser sharp. The lines are really, really sharp. The sunset isn't dramatic, but it's a fine backdrop for the wheel. The thing that kind of troubles me here is I can't see the whole Ferris wheel. And this may just be a problem with Ferris wheels, right? I went online. At first, I thought this might be Coney Island, but it's not. But I cannot find a picture of a Ferris wheel online that shows the whole wheel. So maybe I just need to get over it, right? And think, when I see a Ferris wheel, I just have to get used to the fact that I can't see the whole thing, right? I mean, it does have to be supported at the bottom. But that said, I still feel like I'm missing something at the bottom of this image. Like I want to see more of the context for this Ferris wheel, like what it's sitting on, and maybe more of the surround. So, hats off to the rendering, beautifully done. But I would like to see a little bit more of the context at the bottom. Thank you. Next image.
Image is number 11.
Number 11.
Bubble Cluster Galaxy Oil and Water Abstract, Joe Catronio.
Okay, Joe, look at all of the circles you've packed into one image, right? Really, really nice here. And in fact, those center circles, which are clearly the focus, also have those wonderful colored edges and high contrast edges. So there's no question where you want me to look. But that said, the background here, even though it's not my primary focus, it has this wonderful radial pattern where these bubble lines are radiating out from the center. I don't know if that was lucky or you did that on purpose, but really well done there. I like the composition. I like the colors. I like most everything about this. So, well done, Joe. And next image. Okay.
Next image is 17.
17.
Dodge Brothers, Linda Tomasulo.
Oh, Linda, okay. Well, Linda, I would not have guessed that this was a Dodge. My parents had a Dodge when I was growing up. My dad's brother was a dealer in Dodge cars, so we always got a Dodge. But we never had one with this on the hood. If we had, I wouldn't wanted him to have traded it. So I like this for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is this massive metal thing, which is where my eye is going. And the juxtaposition of that with this abstract kind of less focused color pattern leading off to the bottom right. Beautiful, love that. What I think could be improved is this really bright background thing that's pulling my eye away from those main focal elements. I'm not sure what that is, or maybe it was another car, or I don't know. But if you couldn't fix it in the field, I would recommend fixing that in post, because the main elements here are super strong, but my eye is getting pulled away from those with this bright flash in the background. So well seen, nicely photographed, and that would be my suggestion on how to improve it.
Next one is number 10. Lantern lights, Alan Wiggins.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this one was kind of playful and surprising, right? So oftentimes when I see an image like this, it'll take me just a little bit to make sense of it. In other words, try and understand how it was done, or what it's a picture of, if it's a real photograph. The other thing that's nice about this one is it's both kind of abstract but also realistic, right? Strong graphic element of this grid, and then through the holes or through the round things, I can see little snapshots of reality. What I think could be improved here is one, the sky is rather flat and uninteresting. So that top circle, I think, could be a little stronger. I do like the tilt you've given to this. It kind of adds to the energy and the playfulness of the image. So kudos for that. And well seen. I think you not only got a good one for this theme, but you were able to find it in your thousands and thousands of pictures that you have and pull it up for this theme. So kudos on both of those, Alan.
Okay. Next up is number 23, Hudson River Bank, Robert Neer.
All right, Robert, number 23. Okay, here's another one that really nicely seen and well composed. Technically the lighting on that left half of the rim is a little hot, so we're losing detail there, and I'm not sure of the reason for that, right? If it was done for an artistic reason, or if it was just because that's the way the light was when you were there to look at it. The other thing I was a little bit confused about in this image is what it is that you were trying to tell me. One message I sort of got is that this wheel is like being consumed by the sand, right? I'm kind of gradually losing my ability to differentiate the sand between the inner rim. Or so maybe that's your message here, but then that bright rim does not suggest that. So I think I'm getting conflicting ideas in what it is that you're trying to convey, Robert, about what you found compelling about this particular theme. It is kind of unusual, and I salute you for seeing it. And it's nicely composed and cropped and shot and everything. I think I just need a little more clarity on what you're trying to communicate as an artist about this scene.
Okay. Next up is number 25, the framed wreath, Sean Sullivan.
Oh, the framed leaf. Oh, yes. Yeah, so this was a really nice holiday image, and so I'm sure it suggested that to you because it was December, probably when you were looking for this and looking for pictures. I love the way that the wood here frames the wreath in the middle. That's very nice. Artistically, I think I would like to see a little more dimension here. And by dimension, I mean, visual cues that let me appreciate the 3D nature of this. So, the shadowing and, what things are in front and what things are in back. I don't get very much of that. It looks like a pretty flat image. So artistically, I don't know if you could have played with the lighting here while you were shooting it, or if this was, like on the side of a building or a house somewhere. If that was the case. Pardon me?
It was the second story of a building.
Oh, Sean, this is your image. Okay. Yeah. Yep. So it would have been very hard for you to go up and play with the lighting. Absolutely. So, this is something you can actually do in post, though, right? Is you can add shadowing using this sort of non-destructive relighting technique that I've talked about in some of my workshops, and I'm happy to share with you if you're interested in that. But nicely seen, and it's not only a nice example of the theme, but well timed for the holiday too.
Hey, thank you. Next up is number 19, Christmas, Nancy Delana.
19. Okay, here we have another holiday image, right? And in this one, I mean, it's not only nice Christmas colors, but look at that magnificent bokeh, sometimes called bouquet, in the background. These lights are just like blooming into these soft circles, further reinforcing the theme. So all of those parts I just love. Artistically, the parts I like less are that blurry thing at the bottom left, right? It seems a little discordant with the rest of the image, right? Not the vibrant Christmas colors. And although it's really, prominent, it's kind of blurry. So I guess you don't want me to look at it, but then I can't avoid it. And to a lesser extent, that black thing on the right too. And here again, if you can't get those things out while you're shooting, both of those would be pretty easily taken out in post. So I love the way you've composed it and shot it though, and the way you've used a wide lens here to get the bokeh, and those would be my suggestions on how to improve it.
I think it's just a selfie because you can see Nancy in the...
I missed that.
Right there. Next up is number 18, Round and Red, Marguerite Hill.
Round and Red. Okay, here's another fun holiday image. And what's really nice about this is, these gigantic spheres are sort of improbable, but yet they're clearly real, right? So when you look at this, you're looking at something unusual. The way I might improve this artistically would be to somehow make those spheres more of the image. And one very easy way to do that while you're shooting would be to use a really wide lens and get really close to the spheres. I mean, it doesn't look like you can do that from the front, but maybe if you went around to the back, you could get closer to this. I don't know where these were, but if you could, if you've ever used a really wide lens, you have to get really close to something, otherwise everything just looks like little specks. And whatever you get really close to just gets magnified and it kind of takes over the picture. And here that's exactly what you want to do with these giant spheres. So that would be one thing I could imagine on how you could make those spheres more prominent. Right now, the package is kind of bright and the hanging basket and the reflection and all those things are kind of competing with my eye. And, just artistically, I want to be more engaged with a primary focal element, which here is clearly the big spheres.
Okay, next up is number 28.
Number 28.
Hall Christmas globes, Thomas Whitmore.
Oh, okay. Right. So Thomas, you found just an amazingly wonderful Christmas tree here, right? So this is not only a great holiday image, but the feel here of the tree, the fact that the ornaments are kind of translucent and soft focus, it just makes them glow. And in front of that old town hall there, it's just a beautiful thing. Artistically, what kind of grates on me is that sign at the bottom left. It just doesn't seem to have the same feel as the tree in the old town hall, which is kind of soft and nostalgic and old school. Those signs at the bottom left, not so much, right? That's sort of, okay, here's where we are and who put it up, right? So how could you get rid of those? Well, once again, you could just walk closer so those aren't in your frame. And if your lens is wide enough, you can still get all those elements and not have those in your frame. If that's not possible, here again, you can take those out in post, right? A little cloning, a little content-aware fill, and in about, depending on your skill level, anywhere from 5 minutes to say 30 minutes, those could be gone entirely. And you would have a really like almost Christmas card-like image here. as the result. So well seen, nicely shot, and that would be my way of suggesting on how to improve it.
Okay, next up is number 27, travel portal.
Oh, okay.
Sharon Silversmith.
So this was the other image that I really pondered over. I took a long time in thinking about this one. And I mean, what hits me first is what a marvelous example you found of a circle, right? Here is a circle made of completely rectangular things, right? They're bricks, right? Bricks only come in rectangles, right? And not only does it show that, but you know, the colors of the bricks are so nice, and the contrast of the light and the dark, the fact that there's this rectangular, what do they call that in the middle? Trim? No, lattice. There's this rectangular lattice in the middle that kind of echoes the scene that I see out the window. All of this is just magnificent. The reason that I decided not to score it higher is the thing that I see out the window doesn't help me with that wonderful mood and feeling I see with the bricks and the lattice, right? That's just wonderful colors and nice geometry. You know, you've centered it to just lock my eye on that circle. But now when I look out the window, I'm kind of disappointed about what I see out there. And again, you know, you didn't put this up, right? So how could you fix that? Well, I do a heck of a lot of compositing, and I'm not ashamed of it. I think about images that I make as art, not as documentation. So I have no problem with compositing an image and putting something out the window that would be more sympathetic to the mood and the feeling that I was trying to convey in the picture. Now, not everybody thinks like that, right? I've have many people who think that that's cheating. But personally, I don't think you can cheat with art. I mean, I think however you want to make art is up to you, and it's your call. But that's my bias and my suggestion. But you know, well seen, Sharon, and you know, nicely composed. Okay,
next is number 16, old coins, Joe Cotroneo.
Number 16. All right, Joe. So this is really, really very nice. And I really, at first, I didn't really like the reddish tone that you have here, but I think it works really well on the silver. It kind of gives me this feeling of treasure, right? It's like gold treasure, and these coins are precious. I mean, the way you've composed it and arranged the coins, right? That Kennedy half and that Morgan silver dollar just stand out as two focal points. And I don't mind having two focal points, right? My eye can handle that. All of that's wonderful. I think the pennies are getting just a little odd being that red. And I think the other thing that I imagined might make this a more dramatic image is if you had used a flat black background. I mean, you'll see an image coming up pretty soon of this flower it might be some kind of exotic tropical, you know, paradise flower or something. I'm not a botanist, but the photographer there used a flat background, and it made the flower really pop. I think if you had done that here, your coins, you know, the downside is they would be floating, but the bad side is they would just pop up like crazy off of the background. So I like what you've done, and those would be my suggestions on how to improve it.
Next up is number 13, Circles of Light, Linda Tomasula.
Okay, so Linda, once again, you're really good at seeing images in the field, as it were. And here you clearly photographed this in some sort of a shop, because I can see that in the reflection in the ornaments. What I think you've done brilliantly here, Linda, is it's such a simple composition, right? I mean, it's just 3 ornaments, a shade, and then these, you know, windows in the background. But I love the fact that these 3 balls stand in contrast to the rectangular lights in the background. It's really wonderfully composed and cropped. What I thought might be improved artistically is the reflection in those balls is really busy. And again, it's kind of at odds with the simple and elegant composition you have with your major elements, right? The balls, the shade, and the background. Now, the second suggestion I had was just an artifact of the viewing program. I see these aren't ornaments at all. They're actually light fixtures. Okay, that wasn't evident to me. The viewing program I used chopped off like the bottom strip of every image. So I thought you had chopped off the bottom light fixture, but you didn't. So I take that one away. And now that I look at that center one a little more, I can see the light bulb sticking out from the bottom. Doesn't take away from anything I've said. I think it's still a wonderfully elegant and simple composition. And it's just the busyness of the reflection that I could suggest. But here again, right? Whenever you try and photograph something shiny, you have this dilemma, right? How do I get that reflection to reinforce the message I'm trying to convey as an artist here? And it's really hard. Right. So love the composition, though, Linda, and that would be my suggestion on how to improve it.
Okay. And next is number 2. Spike
Number
Rainbow
2.
Fish, Neil Shapiro.
Number 2. All right, Neil. Well, Neil, you've done something magical here. I don't know if you found this or you made it. When I looked at this image and the other one you put in, the tighter shot of this same arrangement, I mean, I was really impressed. I'll comment more on when I see the other image, the tighter shot. But I think you've done a marvelous job here with interpreting the theme and either finding or creating something that is both very strong graphically and artistically, but also shows the theme in a novel and creative way. I actually like the tighter shot more than I like this distant shot, even though this one, you know, it does the theme in 2 ways, right? I mean, I see circles on the ends of these tubes, which may be drinking straws or maybe not, doesn't really matter. But the ends of those tubes are, you know, dark and contrast with everything else. So those circles come out. And by looking at the whole object here, I also see a circle. So, you know, kudos to you. And let me say a little bit more about the tighter shot when it comes up later. But, you know, very well done, Neil.
Okay, next up is number 21, The Essentials, Phil Olivo.
Phil, I love your sense of humor. This made me laugh out loud when I looked at this. And, you know, I've been on photo shoots where the people I was with would have really appreciated it if I had packed a bag with these essentials in it. You know, I really like the fact that it's a playful image and you have found a way to, you know, to put some nice humor into this. You know, artistically, I don't think that's what you were after. I think you were after, you know, just this humorous feeling of showing how, you know, circles come in all flavors and we need them for all kinds of reasons. So thank you for putting this in.
Okay, honorable mentions. Image 8.
Image 8.
In red, Claudia
Okay.
Jakubowski.
Okay, so Claudia, let me go up to my notes here. Okay, so Claudia, I think this is brilliant. And even though it doesn't suggest it, I suspect this is the same food grader that you put in the next competition. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just guessing that it is, but it doesn't really matter for this picture whether it is or not. What I love that you've done here is, one, you've you've both shown me circles in just the circles that are, as part of this object. Let's say it's a food grater, but then you sprinkled it with water droplets. And while those are not circles, they are round things, right? So you've given me two wonderful examples here that support the theme. You're showing me something that I don't normally see. So that's kind of nice and creative. What I could suggest to make this stronger artistically is what I see through the holes doesn't contribute very much to this wonderful, playful, and red color splash that you're hitting me with in the foreground. I don't know if you designed that background or if it just was. I would like to hear your thoughts about why you chose the background you chose here, but kudos for coming up with a very creative way to interpret this theme. The setup and lighting here are wonderful, and I love that you used red light here to illuminate the face of this. So well done. Okay,
our next honorable mention is image number 14.
Number 14.
Pumpkin and leaf, Kim Koza.
Pumpkin and leaf. So this is almost like a still life, and so I love the way you've used the point of view here to make this pumpkin, I think it's a pumpkin anyway, into more or less a circle. And the thing is probably for me, the most brilliantly done here is the way you've arranged these twisty curly vines here to kind of support the circle and reinforce that image. It just gives my eyes something to do, right? I get to the center of that pumpkin, and now these twisty vines let me kind of wander off and explore those stems, but still stay within the circle. So I think you've done that brilliantly. I love the colors. My only suggestion on how you might make this stronger is it seems that the vertical stacking here of the round leaf and the round pumpkin, it feels kind of static to me. If you think about some of the other images you've seen where they've used diagonals or tilting to add drama or depth, here I don't think you want to add depth because you're looking dead on, but I still think you might play with the geometry here of the composing of these two elements to make it a little more dynamic. Would be the only suggestion I can give you. But I think you've done a wonderful job with textures and colors and arranging here. So, well done, Kim.
Okay, next up is image number 12.
Number 12.
Special treat, Elena Kesey.
Oh, okay. So Elena, I don't know if you own these pieces, but if you do, I like your taste in plates and bowls and implements, I guess. You've done a wonderful job in setting this up, in lighting it. I love the gold color of that spoon and the way it reflects on that inner bowl. The ways I think you might make this a stronger image are, first, there's something a little odd going on with the back rim of the big bowl, right? It seems like a little distorted or a little dark or something. So it's a little puzzling back there, but not a killer. The more substantial thoughts I have for improvement are, one, here again, the reflection in the bowl of the spoon sort of is discordant with the rest of the image. The rest of the image is, elegant, beautiful, lacy, and that blobby thing in the center of the spoon is probably part of the lighting setup, but again, it's not in harmony with the rest of the image. And here, the way I would deal with this would just be to take two pictures, right? Take the second picture where maybe the rest of the setting doesn't look that great, but the center of the spoon looks wonderful, and then just compose those two in post. Right? That might be the easier thing to do. The other suggestion I have here for adding dimension would be play with the shadows here of the spoon and the inner bowl to give the overall image some more dimension. You might even try to lower the camera angle a little bit. So I see a little bit more about the geometry of these two bowls. But really nicely seen, nicely set up. Love the black background. And I also, by the way, like that you did not use a stroke. Although normally judges will count off for that. But the fact that you did not use a stroke around the outside of the image makes these pieces just kind of float, both when I previewed it and here as we see it in competition. So good decisions on all of those. And those are my suggestions on improving it.
Okay, next up is image number 3, Winter Berries, Claudia Jakubowski.
All right, Claudia. So as you can tell, I like this image for several reasons. One is it's sort of like a texture because there's not one clear focal point here, but the fact that the berries are circles and there's so many of them, it sort of turns this into more of a texture, but it's a texture with a wonderful color palette. I mean, the red, white, and green are not only, holiday colors, but they're also just like happy colors, right? When I look at this, I get that joyful feeling. And it's also nice for me that the scene is ephemeral, right? That snow is going to melt, probably did the same day you took the picture. So, you've sort of frozen it, no pun intended here, frozen a moment in time. So we're seeing this beautiful scene of the red berries on, with the green behind them and the snow. So really nicely seen and entered for this theme. So congrats.
Okay, and our last honorable mention is image 22, Circular Boom, Robert Neer.
Oh, okay. So this is the image I was referring to earlier when I said some sort of an exotic plant with a flat background. So really, really nicely done, Robert. And I wouldn't have expected this, but you've used soft focus here for your main, the only right element in the composition. So it has to be the main element. And the fact that you've used a soft focus here somehow works, right? I almost get the impression of a fireworks here and a slow exposure that we're used to seeing in fireworks always kind of blurs, where those burning elements are going. And I get that same feeling here when I look at this wonderful flower. So, just really, my hat's off for your interpretation of the theme, one, but also how you photographed and rendered this flower so that it has that wonderful feeling. One question I would have for you, and I don't know if you did this on purpose. If you did, I'm not sure why you did, or if it was just an accident. But that one tip that's coming out right at us is really bright, and I'm a little confused as how that reinforces the message that you were trying to convey to me for the picture, because it's a little bit discordant as I look at it. Right? I mean, I'm sort of seeing this wonderful bloom of color and shape, and then that bright thing kind of calls in question, how is that reinforcing that message for me? But maybe that wasn't the message, right? Maybe you had a different thing in mind. So if we get a chance to communicate on this picture, I would just like to hear your thoughts on that. But, kudos on the image. Love the way you've done it, and I think it works really well.
Okay. And our winners in 5th place, image number 6, Morning Glory Drops, Janice Pritchett.
Okay, Janice. So this image was a sleeper for me, right? When I first spread out all the pictures of the thumbnails, I kind of passed over this one because I thought, there's this really bright triangle at the top right, and I can't really see the middle of the flower here. So this photographer just wasn't very careful. And then I went back, 2 or 3 times, more. I went back through these images several times. And one time when I looked at this image again, I thought, oh my gosh, look at what Janice has done here. It's almost like she's peeled back this petal at the top right, so I can see the light source that's making the front of this flower just burst with light. And it's magical, right? Here's where that effect is so reinforcing the message that I'm getting here from Janice. Her artistic message for me is look at this flower. It's just bursting with light and calling me to look at it. So love what you've done here. You know, I didn't get it right away. If I'd had to score this with just one pass through the pictures, as some clubs do, I would not have picked this for a winner, but being able to look at it and think about it, your message really came through loud and strong. A thing that I might suggest to improve this would be I don't know if you use Adobe Camera Raw. It's available in Lightroom in the Develop module, in the Basics panel. It's also available in Photoshop in the Camera Raw filter. And also if you open a raw image in either Finder or File Explorer into Photoshop, it'll come into Adobe Camera Raw. But in Adobe Camera Raw, there's two sliders called blacks and highlights. And if you slide those sliders to the left, it'll kind of pull down the histogram and let you add contrast to either the highlights or the darks, but not kill the rest of the image. You know, it won't uniformly add contrast. It will just let you see more detail in either the highlight or the shadows. Now that's if you shot raw, right? If you shot JPEG, part of the compression process of JPEG is throwing away that information because your eye doesn't really pick that up. But if you want to recover that information in post, that's why we shoot raw, so that information is still there and you can recover it. So I actually tried that on your image here, and I sort of like it, but you might like it better this way because your interpretation actually kind of punctuates that burst of light message that I'm getting. So well done. Love it. It took me a little while to appreciate it, but I finally did. And I think it's very nice, Janet. Thank you.
Okay, in fourth place, image number 13, 3 eggs, Kim Koza.
Jim, I don't know what inspired you for this, but it's really just an amazing composition. Love the way you have arranged this on a shadowless background. And the fact that you use these like almost random collection of twigs to make a circle. I mean, I guess you got the hint from birds, right? Because birds make nests out of these random twigs, and it generally comes out in a circle. So, you know, it wasn't totally your invention. But as an example of the theme, look how wonderfully that Kim has done this. And how she has put it on this white background so that there's just no question that she wants us to see these twigs as a circle. And now the eggs inside of it, right? They're not exactly circles, they're ovals, but they're still round things. And the fact that they have these irregular spots on them, I mean, the colors work so well here, and the composition is wonderful. And look at the wonderful implied diagonal that Kim has given us here from the top left to the bottom right with just 2 little twigs, right? So subtly done, but yet so effectively. One thing, Kim, that you might try and may or may not like it is cropping off a little bit at the bottom. You know, there's a lot of white space down there, and for me, is not as much payoff as in what's up in the top of the image. So, you know, try that, and you may or may not like it, but I love what you've done with this, how you set it up and lit it and presented it. So well done.
Okay, in third place, image number 24, Splash, Sharon Silversmith.
24 Splash. So Sharon, I think this is brilliant. You know, you've used what we might call natural circles, right? The splash of raindrops in a pond here. And, you know, the raindrops themselves are circular. And then when they hit the water, they make these wonderful circles. I mean, your big circle here, it would be a stretch for me to call that natural because I suspect there was a rock involved here, right? But yet, you know, it doesn't take away from the artistic brilliance here, right? The fact that you've composed this so that there's this diagonal that's leading my eye in from the top left to the bottom right. And it finishes with this big dinner plate of a circle here in the pond is just beautifully done. And you know, you've used a fast enough shutter that you've kind of frozen the action here of these raindrops hitting the water. So I see these concentric circles in all phases of their development, right? When the drops first hit to when the drops are completely gone and everything in between. So beautifully seen, well composed, nicely lit and rendered. And I think you've done just a brilliant job in this image. So thank you, Sharon, for sharing this, and congrats.
Okay, in second place, Pontiac, image number 9, Pontiac dashboard, Alan Wiggins.
All right, Alan. You couldn't have known that I'm a guy who grew up in the 60s and that I had a car thing. So, you know, when I saw this image, I just wanted to start singing, you know, the Beach Boys, or, you know, some of those tunes that I grew up with as a teenager, you know, and look at all the circles here. I mean, who knew, right, that a Pontiac had that many circles, right? And the, you know, the foam dice here add even more circles. So it's not only the composition that's marvelous, but the rendering here has this soft, glowing feel. And it makes you just want to be in this Pontiac. At least it does for me, right? So, you know, brilliantly done, Alan. The only thing, and the other thing you've done super well, I'm not sure if you did this or if it was just there, is how blurred the stuff through the windows is. It's clear that it's there, but it in no way takes away or competes with my eye for focus, as in some of the other classic car images that we saw. So, you know, brilliant. And you've also darkened down the bottom to the extent that doesn't compete with my eye for where to look, right? My eye is locked in on all these shiny circles. So my only suggestion is that little tag on the ignition key. I know it was there, and you probably couldn't take it off because this was probably at a car show. But here again, in post, you know, it would take you 5 or 10 minutes to remove that sucker. So, you know, it wasn't like a major demerit, because clearly I love this image and I gave it second place. But I think that would strengthen the image, because that one element just doesn't fit with anything else I see in the picture here. But thank you, Alan, for sharing this. You know, it took me back, and it's just beautifully rendered. So thank you.
Okay, in first place is image number 1, coincidentally.
Incidentally, image number 1.
Nice, Neil Shapiro.
Right. So I referred to this image earlier when I talked about Neil's other picture that he had here. And, you know, I'll go back to my opening comment here. When I spread out all of the thumbnail images on my computer to look, the thing that I do as a judge first is I look to see if any of the images like pop up off of the computer. And this one did. The reason it did is I thought it was really graphic art when I first looked at it. And I had just taken a semester in Vasily Kandinsky. So I'd looked at a lot of abstract art, and I'm kind of getting to understand why people like abstract art. And this one like popped off for me. So while I thought it was abstract, when I blew it up to be full screen, it clearly wasn't abstract. It was clearly a real object. But the fact that it appeared that way, and that the way you photographed it took the ends of these straws and made the contrast such that it's almost like the dominant visual element here are those circles, even though these straws are cylinders, I think is brilliant. The fact that it shows me something I don't normally see, not just that this is an object that I've never seen, but the view of it is rather dramatic. You know, compare it to Neil's first picture where I see the whole thing. Here, I just see a part of it, but how dramatic that view is. So Neil, I think you've done just an amazing job interpreting the theme, coming up with a novel and creative way to illustrate the theme. Your use of color and line and form here are outstanding. So, I mean, you killed it. Artistically, technically, creatively, any dimension I could think of, you maxed it out. So that's why I picked this image as the winner. And kudos, Neil. I think you did really well.
Congratulations to Neil and to all other winners, and everybody's images are great. It's time to move on to our second assignment topic, perspective.
Sean, before we move on, is my pace about right, or is it too fast?
No, you're doing great.
I'm doing okay?
Yep, doing perfect.
Let me switch to my other set of notes then.
And
hopefully you'll be able to do your magic.
Yes.
Again, with the numbers, because that worked out just really well.
Yeah. Writing them down as you go along. So get ahead of you. Okay, we're at 25 images, 5 places, 5 honorable mentions. First up is image number 20. And
sorry about that.
That's okay.
Hello. Hi, Jim. It's Fran.
Hi, Fran. I can't talk because I'm in.
Checking what time you're coming tomorrow.
Oh, 10 o'clock.
What?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock?
Uh-huh.
I will see you then. What would you like to eat?
Oh, bagel.
I'll see you at 10 o'clock. Don't worry about it.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm sorry about that. I had put my phone on Do Not Disturb, but that person has serious medical issues, and I thought it might be an emergency. So she's in my blast through list. And anyway, apologize for that.
Back where we were, this is image number 20 in your list.
Image 20.
The Mackinac Bridge from the Ferry. Mackinac.
Okay.
Nancy Jones.
Okay, so Nancy, I don't remember if you were the same artist who did the Ferris wheel in theme 1. I think maybe you weren't, but the rendering style of this image is almost identical to that, right? You've taken a real scene and you've somehow made it appear almost as if it's a sketch. My person is calling me back again, but I'll just put the phone on the floor. I love the way you've done that, right? It kind of rivets my eye on the only element here that I can look at. And it's not only true of the bridge, but the guy wires as well, right? I mean, they're just laser sharp, and they stand out against the sky and the water, so well done. I mean, the other thing that's really impressive here is the way you've taken this image from a moving boat, from a ferry, and had it come out so razor sharp and well composed and focused. Now, I mean, Sean hasn't said it, but the order that we're seeing them here isn't the order that I ranked them in. So the fact that we're seeing this first doesn't mean that I scored it the lowest. This is sort of a random order for the images that didn't place. So don't take the fact that it's first as a slight, by no means. I think you've done a magnificent job in seeing this and rendering it. So well done.
Okay, the next image is number 1, and it is Crescendo, Neil Shapiro.
All right, Neil. You've shown us a waterfall here, and the point of view is rather novel, and I love the fact that you've used a slow shutter here to kind of give us the feeling of motion. I love that streak at the top right is a diagonal that's pulling our eye into the image, and the fact that it's on that black is a wonderful contrast, right? That kind of lets it pop out and gives us a natural path right into the center of the image where you want us to look. Having said that, I don't know if you've tried to photograph a lot of waterfalls, but for me, it is one of the most challenging subjects to photograph. And the reason I say that is, when I go and see a waterfall, it's clearly one of the most miraculous things in nature, right? It's almost like spectacular, right? This water falling, and it's just amazing, right? That said, I personally have never taken a picture of a waterfall, no matter what shutter speed or point of view or lens or anything, that I really liked, that I thought had the power of being at the waterfall. So one little trick that I read about and that I have tried, not very much, but I'll pass along, is rather than trying to photograph the whole waterfall, pick out one little feature and try and photograph that, right? And it might be a bit of spray or a place where a rock, causes a bit of the water to flare up, or an eddy in the bottom, or, there's any number of things you could try here as to how to get some sort of image that clearly conveys your point of view and your feeling and your emotion. Because as I've said, I find it's just impossible to capture the emotion of the entire falls. So the best I can try to go for is some feature of the falls that tries to communicate something that's maybe unusual, that I wouldn't see from looking at 100 feet away or something. But I like what you've done here and how you've used your unusual perspective and leading line here to draw us in.
Okay, image number 24. Final Destination, Sean Sullivan.
Final Destination, Sean. Okay, so Sean, you may not be a movie buff. I am, and one of my favorite movies is a movie called Stand By Me. And when I saw this picture, I imagined it would have been what one of the small boys saw as they walked across the railroad bridge. And if you've seen the movie, you know the scene.
Oh, I know the movie. Yeah.
So when I looked at this picture, I thought, wow, that really takes me to that and makes me feel like what they might have seen. It was also really nice that your rendering here is almost like, it takes me back. I mean, that's quite an old movie, and this is almost like a classic style rendering of the scene, and the fact that the ties are old and decaying kind of adds to that. I mean, I hope you didn't put yourself in danger because those ties don't look sturdy. So, but you're still here. So I guess you live to tell the tale. What I might suggest as some way to improve it would be, again, some way to kind of add some dimension here. I mean, clearly the tracks getting narrower as I get farther away suggests dimension, but I don't see much shadowing or difference in sharpness or brightness or anything that's again suggesting to my eye dimension. And the fact that what's probably a tunnel there is hidden back in the shadows or somehow beyond. So I'm not sure if that would work, but I think I would play with it because, as I said, while I love the scene depicted, I think I'd like a little more dimension here and feeling that I'm actually immersed in the scene rather than just looking at a picture of it.
That's a railroad car. The tunnel.
Oh, you're on a railroad card.
It's the railroad track, but the thing in the back is a railroad car, not a tunnel.
Oh, it's not a tunnel.
Nope, it's an abandoned car.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I couldn't tell that.
South Carolina. Abandoned everything there. All right. So next image up is number 15. Portrait Reflection, Linda Tomasulo.
Okay, Linda. Wow. Once again, you've seen something and photographed it that surprises me and is both rare and brilliant. So when I've tried to do portrait photography, I'm not great at it. But when I look at what I would call a normal portrait, just kind of a straight on portrait, I often want to try and kind of understand something about the personality of the person portrayed. And your novel way of doing it kind of makes that a little more of an adventure game, right? So I have to work a little harder at reading this man's stern expression, but because you made me do that, right? It helped me both first notice his expression, which is sort of stern, but then also notice that the artwork on the wall behind him is sort of abstract and emphasizes design. Now look at the furniture, right? Clearly, it's furniture that favors design over comfort. So the overall message that you've made me see here is a guy who may be some sort of a disciplined designer, right? And so I would enjoy talking to this guy, right? I think he would have some interesting perspectives on life. Since you come from a background in visual design, maybe he was your friend. I don't know how you got to take his portrait, but you kind of surprised me on this one. I mean, I didn't know it was your picture, but I love the novel approach to a portrait here and the kinds of things it helped me to discover about this man's personality from decoding this image. So well done.
Okay, the next image is image number 4, Air Force Memorial Reflected, Alan Wiggins.
So Alan, really nicely seen. And I love the way you've composed this. I don't think it's an accident, right? That tall spire is perfectly perpendicular to the lines of text here on the wall. And it ends just at the top of that center slab there. So I think you very carefully framed this, composed it, picked your point of view. And the fact that you've tilted the whole image adds some energy and interest to the picture. So I think both of those are really well done. So nicely seen, nicely composed and photographed.
Next image is number 21, Looking Up, Paul O'Keefe.
Looking Up. So in addition to being a car guy, I'm a tree guy. I was just with this wonderful fog that we had last week. I went out walking and I saw some wonderful tree silhouettes in the fog. Here, this isn't a foggy day, but your novel perspective is to get really close to the tree. So it looks like it's, almost like a giant sequoia tree here standing really tall. And the contrast here of the bark and the canopy is really nice. Now, I think you could improve the image by showing me a little more detail in the texture of the bark here. I mean, in a sense, that is your major composition element here, is that tree bark. So it would be nice if there was a little more detail in that. But I love how you've placed it and composed it and how you've used the canopy and the limbs there to kind of fill out the image and give it a balance and kind of complete the image. So, well done, nice sense of composition, and that would be my suggestion on how to improve it.
Okay, next is image number 13, Broad Side of the Barn, Joe Cotroneo.
So Joe, you've used a couple of things here that I think you knew that everyone was going to love. And one is the color red, because, everybody loves red. In fact, I had a gallery owner one time. I asked her, what sells in the gallery here? And she thought about it. And the only thing she could come up with was red. So, not only do I like red, but everybody seems to like red. So you've picked a good color here. The other thing that I think you've picked that everyone loves is barnboard, right? For whatever reason, we all love barnboard. And you've used both of those here in the picture. The other thing I think you've done brilliantly, and I don't know if you did this on purpose or if it just happened, is if you think about the way that people who paint and sketch use the word perspective, which is the theme. Oftentimes what they mean by perspective is how they will have, parallel lines intersect at infinity to show depth and dimension, and how they'll vary proportion to convey a sense of depth. And, while we know that this barn board is perfectly symmetrical, in its width and spacing, the way you photographed it here, look at the perspective in the lines you're showing, right? It clearly shows what's close and what's far, what's getting farther as it gets farther from the lens. So I think you've sort of found a beautiful way to highlight this theme perspective from the point of view of classical artists. So well done, nicely seen and composed.
Okay. The next image is number 25. Sunset Bay from Above, Sean Sullivan.
Sean Sullivan. So since you're right here, I can actually find the answer to this question. Was this shot from a drone?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So seeing this makes me want to do drone photography.
That's great.
I think it hit me as wonderful for a couple of reasons, Sean. One is just the point of view, right? We almost never get to see a scene like this. But the other thing that I think you've done just brilliantly here is look at the horizon here. It almost looks normal, right? When we look at a horizon, this is often how we see a horizon look. So, I guess the drone must have a pretty wide lens, because although we're seeing kind of down at the boatyard and the park here, when we look at the horizon, it's almost like we're looking straight out at it. So in this one,
actually, it's cropped, so.
Pardon me?
I actually had to crop it in.
Oh, you had to crop it? All right, well, it's a beautiful crop, but note how we're seeing both of those perspectives. We're seeing a perspective that's looking sort of straight down, but at the horizon, almost like straight out, and this gradual gradient of that viewing in between. So, super crop, nicely done. And I love the fact that it's in the perspective theme and that it's such a wonderful and novel example of perspective.
Thank you. Next up is number 2, Tier Cathedral, Claudia Jaskowski. Trier.
All right, Claudia. Really, really wonderful interpretation of the theme here. I mean, for several reasons, not the least of which is your subject is facing right into the camera. Right? I don't know that I've ever seen a picture of Jesus where he's actually facing the camera on the cross anyway. So, just from that alone, it's a nice perspective. But also note how we can see the surround, clearly differentiated from your main compositional elements here. But they do such a wonderful job of framing your main elements, but they're also sharp. But yet they're clearly differentiated because they're a different color. They might be slightly less sharp, but not radically so. So you've done a wonderful job in controlling for showing me interesting detail in the background, but not, sort of competing in pulling my eye away from your main elements. And it's particularly impressive that the last time I looked at this, I realized that the face of that cross is polished, but yet somehow you've managed not to have that highly polished flat surface detract in the way that the pictures we saw of the classic cars did, where the chrome bumpers had those reflections that pulled our eye and caused elements that didn't fit with the rest of the composition. You avoided that here. You've done all those things well. So I think it's a beautiful example of the theme, well seen, photographed, composed, rendered, etc. Very nicely done, Claudia.
Okay, and next image is number 14, Falling, Kim Koza.
He achieves the same, whereas some people felt like they had to pull out a
Sean, do you want to mute that mic, or should we ask the speaker to?
I muted it. We're good. This is image number 14. Falling,
Okay.
Kim Koza.
So this image made me laugh. For a couple of reasons. One of them, and I don't know if you intended this or not, but this this figure's right arm is cracked, and your depiction here makes me think that this figure just hit the ground. So there's a jolt here, and clearly the jolt didn't really fracture this person's arm, but it's in concert with your, what I'm taking as your message here. I also love the way that even though this is what some people might call a shadowless background, you've used shadow here to sort of let me know that the head and the left arm here have just hit the ground, right? Those are contact shadows. So you're giving me those visual cues here that this figure has just crashed, hit the ground, fractured his right arm, and you've done it all just very elegantly with your composition and use of shadowing and composition. So, and I also appreciate the humor in it. So, well done, Kim. I remember your name from other images popping up. So I love your creativity and the way it's come through here in this submission.
Okay, next is image 18, Chrysler Building at Night, Nancy Delaney.
All right, Nancy. So just like you, I guess, the Chrysler Building is one of my favorites in the city. And by the way, if you've never seen the pictures that were taken in 1934 by a famous photographer whose name is Margaret Bork White, you should Google that name and find her images that she took. Well, someone took of her taking pictures from the Chrysler Building. They're quite dramatic. I think once you see those, if you don't already appreciate the Chrysler Building from that point of view, you will. But I like what you've done here. But artistically, my suggestion here on how to make this stronger is make it a little more evident what you want me to take away from looking at your rendering here. When I look here, the first thing I see is the Chrysler Building in that big building next to it. But then the brightest thing in the picture is this pizza parlor down at the bottom right. There's some cars down there. So I'm a little confused about the feeling or the message you want me to take away from this. Is it the magnificence of the Chrysler Building? Is it the mix of the magnificence of the architecture with the common pizza buildings that are also here in New York? It was a little bit of a mixed message for me. So I would suggest do what you need to make your message clearer to the viewer. The other thing that I just personally like in my night pictures is I like the sky to look darker. I know that sometimes when you take a long exposure, the sky gets lighter because your camera integrates light, particularly in the city from the sky, but just go back in post and darken that sky back down. So when I look at that, I get the feeling, oh yeah, that's a night sky. And it looks like the way my eye sees the sky when I look up at night. So those are my two suggestions for how to give this sort of a more powerful message.
Okay. Next image is number 5, Portland Headlight Sunrise, Claudia Jakubowski.
All right, Claudia. So here's clearly another holiday image, right? You have found not only a lighthouse decorated for the holiday, but you also found it at sunset. The lighthouse is wonderfully placed in the composition here. The reason I didn't score it higher is I feel like I'm missing the most dramatic part of the sunset, which must be down lower in the frame. So I feel somehow I'm missing out, right? I love the elements here, the lighthouse, the sunset, the placement, but I feel like I'm cheated out of seeing the best part of the sunset. I don't know if that's true. You know, maybe it was just late in the day and the sun had already gone down farther, but that's the reason I didn't score it higher is I just wanted a little more color in what's the biggest part of the image here, that sky at the top right.
Okay, this is image 11, roasting marshmallows, Kim Koza.
Oh, it's you again, Kim. All right. Which number was it again, Sean?
Number 11.
Number 11. Okay. So I looked at this image quite a few times before I decided it must be a snow globe. And the so-called fire in the middle must be a light bulb inside the snow globe. So that what I'm seeing here is like a macro or close-up view of the center elements of that. I don't know if that's actually right, but that's the way my brain decoded it, because clearly the boy is a figure, so he's not real. But look at the sky here. It looks almost like realistic. You know, it doesn't have the same, you know, like ceramic look that the boy does. And I could imagine a snow globe doing that, although I don't know that I've ever seen a snow globe like that. So I don't know if I've decoded it right, but I love the way you have seen this and your perspective, crop, capture, rendering, etc. The whole artistic treatment gives us this view of this that's just really nice. So thank you for this, Kim.
Okay, next up is image 16, mirror view, Marguerite Hill.
All right, Marguerite. So good idea here, you know, sort of using a mirror to not only impose a circle theme on what would have been just, you know, I don't know if that's holly, but clearly a bush with red and green. So the mirror did that for you. The red fingernail kind of echoes the red berry. That's sort of nice. The reason I didn't score this higher is I felt like the surround for the green, again, didn't kind of artistically reinforce what I'm looking at in the center, right? How do those two compositional elements complement each other to sort of bring out the message that you're trying to get me to see or feel when I look at this? So I like that you've used that mirror to come up with the circle theme. Next time, I think I'd like you to think a little bit how you could think about how to use the surround to come up with a complementary content for what we see in the center of the mirror here.
Okay, and the next image is number 9 in the list. As Christmas Tree a Waltzing, Alina Kesey.
Christmas Tree a Waltzing. So here again, this was another one I spent some time on because, again, I may not be decoding this right, but I just set up a workshop where I had a guy come in and demonstrate this technique he called light painting, where it was at night, so it was dark, and we opened the shutters on our camera, and he would take like fiber optic lights and move them around in front of the cameras. And that movement would make these streaks of color and light and curves. And it's really quite delightful. That's the way my brain decoded this, maybe because I just did a workshop on that. So I love the color and the design here. Clearly, I love abstraction. What didn't seem to fit so well for me was the applicability of this to the theme of round things. I see this more as an example of light painting, and there are curvy things here in the light painting, but it seems that it's more a strong example of light painting than of curvy things. Now, I admit I could be wrong.
Yes. Perspectives.
Perspectives, correct, perspectives. So whether it's perspectives or round things, though, I think it's the same feeling for me, right? If you think about all the other images we've seen, even though some of them are quite abstract, they're accentuating round things that we see. And the light painting is making roundish shapes here. But for me anyway, the emphasis here is more on light painting than on the perspective on light painting, if you will. So that's the reason I didn't score it higher. I'm not saying I'm right, but it was my bias and I struggled, I have to admit. But had we had an entire theme on light painting, it would be easier for me to sort of place this image in relation to all of the others in the set.
Ooh, next year's topic. Anyway, honorable mentions. First honorable mention is image number 17, Table for Two, Linda Tomasillo.
Linda. So I think we can conclude at this point that Linda has a knack for seeing things from an unusual point of view. And not only has she done it here, but let me point out a couple other things that she has done brilliantly, right? One is she's taken a perfectly regular grid and tilted it so that it adds sort of energy and a dynamic feel to this picture. But yet to stabilize the picture, she's taken the table of two and put it in a power third. And by power third, I mean a third both horizontally and vertically. So it's not only in a power third, but it's perfectly level. So when we look at this, even though most of the image is skewed, we don't feel like we need to tilt our heads, right? We feel like the main element here is perfectly aligned and grounded. So kudos, Linda, for that. I love the way that you've seen this and framed it. My one suggestion on how to improve it, and I'll put a caveat after this, after I say it, is I would love it if there were more interaction between these two people. So for example, if they were playing footsie, it would give this a little more power. Now, having said that, I know there's a limit in what you can suggest that people do when you're taking pictures. And clearly, I even have trouble if I'm a street photographer asking if I can take a picture of people. So asking this young couple to play footsie would probably be way beyond my comfort level, right? But yet, as an artist, right, I'm just saying I miss seeing more interaction between that couple. I think if there were more, it would have a stronger message for me. So well done. And that would be my suggestion for improvement.
Okay, our next honorable mention is image number 22, Looking Up, Robert Neer.
Okay, Robert. So this image, I think, could be the cover picture for both topics because you've done both themes in one picture, right? You have found something that's round. I mean, it couldn't be any rounder. It couldn't be any more prominent. So you've grabbed my attention with a round, in fact, circular thing, but it's also this wonderful perspective of looking straight up at this, what I guess is a skylight from right underneath it. So, well done. You could have put this in either theme and it would have been equally effective. I also love the way that you've used kind of a muted light here to let me see the molding around what I think is a skylight here. The only reason I question that interpretation is the width of this molding relative to the width of the skylight. So maybe this is a hole in the ceiling, so the molding is actually much closer to me. I can't tell. If they're actually at the same distance, it's a very small skylight or window. But I don't really care artistically. I just find it interesting, well composed, lit, framed, and nicely done. So thank you.
Okay, Next image is number 19, Wavy Boardwalk. Nancy,
by the way, Robert just put into the chat that it's a light fixture. That answers all my questions. Right? So it's much closer to the camera than I would have expected, and the ceiling isn't that far away. So I thought we were looking up 3 stories here. We're not. We're in one room, looking straight up from under a light fixture. Nicely seen, Robert. Okay, so Wavy Boardwalk. Which number did you say it was, Sean?
19.
19. Okay. So, so nicely done, Nancy. Your perspective here isn't that novel, but what I love that you've done is that you've used your crop and you've used the shadowing to make it super clear what I'm supposed to be looking at here, right? I mean, this boardwalk, let me go back. The fencing, the railing on the boardwalk is constructed in an unusual or wavy way. And your shadowing here makes that super duper clear. Technically, your highlights are really hot here. So I'm losing detail in the highlights. And again, if you shot raw, just go back into Adobe Camera Raw to find that highlight slider and slide it to the left, and detail will come right back into those highlights. If you shot JPEG, they're probably lost. But I love what you've done here in terms of composition and crop, because you've just made it extremely clear what you want me to look at. And in that sense, your perspective is now my perspective. So, well done.
Okay, next honorable mention is number 8, Boardwalk, Janice Pritchett.
All right, Janice. So Janice, I like this image a lot. And, but at first glance, I couldn't really explain why I like it so much. I mean, there are some technical things that could have been done better here. So here again, there's almost no detail in the boardwalk, right? There's almost no detail in the sky. But what I think you've done just brilliantly here is you're showing me a beach in a very evocative and compelling way. I don't see a broken fence at the sand dunes like I see in so many images that photographers show me of sand dunes. I don't see any sand. I don't see any waves. I don't see any water, right? All I see is this boardwalk and this wonderfully exposed grass. And your composition here makes that the whole picture, right? And I think that's why I love this picture, right? I mean, I think I could look at this picture quite often and I wouldn't get tired of it. I would feel good looking at it just as I do now, right? So I don't actually know how you saw this or why you took the picture right at that point. I mean, perhaps it was that the boardwalk bent a little bit. That always is kind of a nice compositional element. The fact that you've put it dead center there, there's no question where you want me to enter the picture and where you want me to go. And there's no falling off the boardwalk here, right? Your composition keeps me right on the boardwalk. So it's kind of an unconventional treatment, I would say, of this setting, but it really works. So congratulations, Janice. I like this a lot.
Okay, and the last honorable mention is number 7, A Greater View, Elena Kesey.
A greater view. Okay, Elena. So I don't remember if you were the same artist that did the what I thought was the greater, the red water spots in the first competition. If you were, I suspect this is the same greater. But in any case, I love what you've done here. I don't think I've ever seen my greater from this point of view. So it's almost like you've let us climb inside the greater here. And I love the way that the lighting you've used gives us this wonderful gold sheen to some of the indentations here. So it's like, you know, there's this gold light coming in from the right top and somehow from the back, which is the top of the grater, which I suspect is solid. So I'm not sure how that's happening. Another thing you've done brilliantly that I didn't appreciate at first is I thought this would work better as a portrait orientation. I'm sorry, as a landscape orientation rather than a portrait. You know, so I took this into Photoshop and I rotated it. Yours works way better. And I think one of the reasons for that is this element you have at the bottom. It's the sort of the cutouts on that element suggest it's something like a ladder or a path. So visually, I can kind of walk into the image or the grater using that element. I don't know if you intended that or if anyone else gets that but me, but because I tried flipping this around, this orientation worked the best. And I'm sort of guessing is that's why I like it the best. Is there something about the texture, if you will, of that side of the grater that makes it work as the footing for this view. So well done, Elena. I like what you did.
Okay, our winners. In fifth place, image number 23 is High Voltage, Robert Neer.
Robert, all right. So as an interpretation of the theme, you just nailed it, right? How many electrical towers have we seen in our day? I can't even count them, right? And generally when I see them, I don't like them because I think, oh, you know, they've taken a perfectly beautiful landscape and they've ruined it by putting up these high tension wires. Well, you have given me a point of view here that makes the tower really interesting. And the fact that you've tilted it gives it an energy, and again, no pun intended there, but you've given it an energy that it would not have if you've presented this as, you know, squared up with the frame. So nicely done there. Another thing that you did, I think, really well, and I'm not sure if it was intentional, is that the sky is really flat. The result is it in no way competes from me looking at the structural elements here, which is, you know, what you're intending me to see, the structure of this tower. Another thing I just noticed I hadn't appreciated before is by being a little bit off center, the square of the base doesn't show up as square. It has what sketchers would call perspective. So it's skewed a little bit. And once again, it's taking something I know is square by intuition and presenting it as something, you know, more skewed visually. And that's really interesting and I think adds power. So beautiful example of the theme, well seen, well cropped, and nicely done. So thank you for this.
Okay, in fourth place is image number 12, Oculus Reflected, Alan Wiggins.
Okay, Alan. I think I must be one of the only New York photographers who has never photographed the Oculus. I've seen pictures of it. I've been near it, and it's clearly one of the most architecturally dramatic buildings in the city. I've never photographed it, and when I finally realized that you had done a mirror rendering here, I was actually disappointed that the Oculus doesn't look like this because, you know, when I first saw this, I thought, holy shit, this Oculus is like some sort of a crystal Titanic. I mean, the thing is coming right at me. It's like glowing, and it's the most dramatic thing I've ever seen. I think one of the reasons you fooled me is this central element I don't think is a mirror reflection. I mean, it's not symmetric left to right the way the background is. So I suspect, although I'm not certain, that center element is somehow not a mirror reflection. But the image just artistically is so powerful that I could not stop looking at this and wish that I had seen this, that I had really been there and sort of sailed with the Oculus, if you will. So, beautifully done. And I assume your competition rules allow this sort of image manipulation. I think it's brilliant. And thank you for sharing it with us.
Okay, and in third place is image number 6. Teamwork, Janice Pritchett.
Image number 6, Janice. Okay, Janice, this is wonderful. I mean, the perspective that I see here, or I feel anyway, is that I'm inside this balloon, right? I don't know how you get inside of a balloon. I don't think that would be safe because clearly this balloon, I think, is being deflated. It looks like this person who is the most prominent shadow is pulling on some sort of a valve maybe that's letting the air out of the top here. So your use of the shadows of the people here is not only brilliant, but the fact that this one person who's the most prominent is not only the main actor, but the fact that he's directing our attention right to the center of the image is also brilliant. So it's wonderfully composed. The point of view is brilliant. The colors are wonderful. The only thing that grates on me here is that dark line that's a diagonal from like the upper right to the lower left. I suspect that's one of the guy wires, and there was no way to take it out when you shot it. But, probably, 2 minutes in Photoshop could remove that sucker. There's something called the spot removal tool that if you abuse it and use it on a line instead of a spot, might just take this thing out in basically one stroke of the mouse. So I would suggest playing with that. Not that it isn't brilliant the way it is. It's clear that's a guy wire. But for me, it kind of gives me pause from looking at all of the other wonderful compositional elements here. And it makes me think, why am I seeing that? Because it's somewhat discordant from the shadows and curves and lines and everything else in the image. But brilliantly seen and well done. So thank you, Janice.
In second place, image number 3, Vermont Geometry, Neil Shapiro.
Okay, so these images are getting better because I scored this higher than Janice's, right? And I really like Janice's. What I loved about this, Neil, is how you've used not only a unique perspective, but also a really wide lens to make an otherwise somewhat common element, a covered bridge, like a really dramatic thing here. So we're seeing a covered bridge in a way that I personally have never seen one, right? I'm really inside this bridge. And while it's somewhat distorted because of the curvature of the lens, it's not at all unclear what I'm looking at and why I'm seeing so much detail here. And the fact that these two big support elements are curved makes the curvature of the lens much less important, right? I mean, I'm not crazy about that turnbuckle up at the top, and just like in Janice's image, in 20 seconds you could take that out in post. It doesn't seriously detract from the image. It just is something I'd rather not have to look at. The other thing that I tried, I took this into Photoshop. I couldn't decide if it was a little tilted to me. So I took it into Photoshop, and I actually like it rotated to the left, just a little less than 2 degrees. I don't know if you'd like that more or less than as presented. I'd suggest just trying it to see, but really nicely done, nicely photographed. And another thing I hadn't appreciated until just now is how you've controlled the exposure. Things that are in deep shadow here, I can see, and things that are brilliantly lit like the sky, I can also see. So I don't know if you bracketed it. but you've controlled the exposure really well, so I can see both of those things. Really well done, Neil, and nice interpretation of the theme.
Okay, and first place, image number 10, Dandelion Puff, Joe Cotroneo.
Joe, you killed it. I mean, talk about point of view. Who's ever seen a dandelion from this point of view? And as Joe is presenting this view of it, look at the detail we can see in the center of the dandelion here. How remarkable that is. And what an amazing contrast that detail is in the dandelion puffs that are farthest away from the lens here. I mean, they're so much blurred, we can almost not make out that they're dandelion, but it's all one capture, right? I don't think Joe's composited this. I could be wrong, but I think Joe is using a macro lens here. And we know that when we use a macro, the depth of field can go to almost zero, right? So that things that are farther away from your focal plane can drop off very quickly in focus and give us this kind of very soft detail in juxtaposition to the ultra sharp detail that Joe is showing us on the center and whatever those little stalks are. They might be stamens, but that part of the dandelion that we see coming out from the center. Another thing that Joe has done brilliantly here, and I suspect he did it on purpose, was he used a flat blue sky so that we are in no way distracted from looking at what Joe wants us to see, which is the center of this dandelion, the wonderful detail in the puffs that are at the same focal plane as the center. But then we can also clearly see those out of focus puffs with no competition from what would be clouds in the sky. So the other thing you did brilliantly, Joe, that even if I had seen this, I don't think I could have achieved it, would be to show just half of this, right? So I'm not forced with what do I do with the stem of the dandelion as I would if I tried to show the whole center. You solved that problem by just showing me half. And the half itself is a satisfying shape. It's half of a circle. So somehow symmetrically, my mathematician self is happy, my artistic self is happy, my technical self is happy. You nailed it on all dimensions. That's why I picked this as the winner. Thank you, Joe, for putting this in.
Congratulations to all our winners, and all the images are great. Thank you very much, Jim, for your commentary and your judging. It was well received from what I can see on the chat. Anybody got questions for Jim? Comments? You got it on mute.
Hey Jim, you mentioned how to add shadows in post. Can you briefly describe how to do that?
I can briefly describe it. I don't know if my brief description will be enough to let you do it, Joe. So when I teach Photoshop, and I do, the main concept I teach is how to edit the image, what I call non-destructively. So edit in such a way that you can change your mind without ever losing information about the image. And the way that I show to do dodging and burning or altering the tone of the image is to use an adjustment layer. And the one that I always like is the curves layer. So I use a curves layer to change the tone of the image. And the way I selectively change the tone is I use what's called a layer mask. So the layer mask controls what part of that layer is shown and what part is hidden. And the little jingle is white reveals and black conceals. So where the mask is white, it reveals the effect. Where the mask is black, it conceals it. So to add a shadow, I'll add a curves layer, I'll darken the curves, I'll make the mask all black so that darkening is evident nowhere. And then on the mask, I'll gradually paint in white. So where I want the shadow to appear, that darkening appears just in that part of the image where the mask has a white color. Now, I said that very quickly.
No, I get it. I understand.
It turns out that technique is not only good for shadowing, it is the best way for dodging and burning and selectively relighting an image that I know of, which is the number one thing that I do when I retouch an image. So I'll see if I can send a link. I have some, in fact, you know what? Look on my website. Under the menu topic, there's something called Photoshop Quickies. And I believe there's a Photoshop quickie on relighting images. So look there, there's some step-by-step video tutorials on what I just described, and I think it'll help you execute that.
Yeah, I do use that method for dodging and burning. I never thought of it to add shadows though.
Well, you know what? Another one of the secrets is you can construct your layer mask. So let's say, for instance, we had a picture here of a figure on a shadowless background, but there were contact shadows at the head and at the arm. I suspect those were done in the shoot, but had they not been done in the shoot, you could have done that with just the method we described, but the mask right next to the head and arm would have to be a very sharp transition. So you can you can do that with the technique I've just described by selecting those areas and then using that selection so that your painting excludes those areas. And even though you're painting with a soft brush, you can use the selection to cause the painting in those areas to have just a sharp drop off.
Yep.
Sounds like you're an experienced Photoshopper, Joe. So you probably get it. But you know, if for those that don't, look on my website under Photoshop Quickies.
Thank you, Jim.
And good question, Joe.
Judging too.
Oh, well, you know, I put my heart into it. So I hope I've conveyed some of that passion tonight. And like I say, you can always send me questions through my email. I'm happy to get that.
Thanks so much, Jim.
Oh, thank you, Linda. Thank you for coming.
Great seeing you.
Good to see you too.
Nice seeing everybody. Don't forget, get your general monochromes in by Sunday, and we'll see you all next week.
All right, take care, everybody. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Happy New Year.